side to side. Gary and Mackie. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Melly Garthwaite, Council at Large, present.
Councilman Brian Laux,
Councilman Brian Laux, Council at Large, present.
Councilwoman Ann Heffernan,
Councilwoman Ann Heffernan, 1st District, present.
Councilwoman Michelle Coletti,
Michelle Coletti, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Sarah Akbarali is absent. Councilman Gary Donovan,
Councilman Gary Donovan, 4th District, present.
Councilman Edward McMillan,
Councilman Edward McMillan, 5th District, present.
Councilwoman Dawn Callahan,
Councilwoman Dawn Callahan, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker,
Councilman Catherine Tucker, 7th District, present.
Councilman Christopher Vargo,
Councilman Christopher Vargo, 8th District, present.
Councilwoman Katie Muller,
Councilwoman Katie Muller, 9th District, present.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone, welcome back.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone, 10th District, present.
Welcome back. And Chairman Nicholas Pascal.
And I have to follow that up. Chairman Nicholas Pascal, present. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We will now enter into public session. The time is now 7:02. Would anyone like to speak before the City Council? For the second time, would anyone like to speak before the City Council? For the third and final time, would anybody like to speak before the City Council? Yes. Miss.
Good evening, all. My name is Vanessa. I think by now you all know why I keep coming here tonight. Roya Mohammadi.
I'm sorry, just full name and address for the record.
Vanessa Suarez. I am a New Haven resident and an advocate for Roya, who was a resident of 73 Knox Street. Roya's birthday was last week, April 16th, Tuesday. We spent that night going to the police commission meeting and speaking truth to her story, letting them know the police misconduct, the many concerns that we've raised to you week and week over again that we've come here. Did feel like that was in some ways received better. The commissioner did ask to have a meeting with us, which is, at the end of the day, one of some of the basic things that we ask when we come up with this, right? We do expect for you guys to take the time and show the attention of why this matters to you. I don't have a speech prepared tonight, but I am accompanied tonight by Yane Aleman. I don't know if Yane, you could just wave for the council members. She is a West Haven resident of Dodge Street or Ave, I'm not sure. But Yane is with here tonight because, like Roya's family, she has been impacted by femicide. She is your constituent, and for the past year, she has spent herself and her family fighting, preparing to go to trial to fight for her sister, Lisbeth, who had been murdered in 2020. And even until this year, there had not been justice for her case. We had advocated for years to secure a conviction. And we are proud to say today that there was a conviction. But that is not enough. Because real justice for Lisbeth would mean that there wouldn't have been another murdered woman. There wouldn't be more stolen women. And the reality is that we're here today and we've been coming here week for week because Roya's death shows us that there was another stolen woman in your city. There was another woman who was murdered in your city. And the major difference with Lisbeth, who was murdered in East Haven and was an East Haven resident, is the way that the police responded in that case. And though similarly, like the West Haven police, they didn't immediately look for Lisbeth, right? They didn't look for Roya because police don't immediately care to look for Black or brown women. We know this. This is shown everywhere. But when the police did have to respond, they were able to secure an arrest within 6 months of an investigation. 6 months. And this police department of this city it's over 1 year. And just in this month, April, secured an arrest for what? Resisting an arrest, the one person of interest? As if that makes a difference in the investigation of Roya's death. It does not, and it is not enough. We're here because what we've seen in Lisbeth's case, the timeline shows us that this police department here in this city is not doing enough, has in fact not done enough. Similarly, like Roya's case, the East Haven Police Department was lied to by the person who in fact murdered Lisbeth. Because this is what these men do when they kill women. They lie and they manipulate. And of course they're going to tell the police, no, I had nothing to do with it. I don't even know this woman sometimes. Our claims of police misconduct are serious. The fact that when new officers were assigned to the case, they were telling us that they couldn't even verify if Roya was a resident of this city is insane and absurd and unacceptable. 8 months into an investigation and you're telling me you don't know the victim of your case, if she was a resident of your city, you want to deny that. You want to play this jurisdiction game that everyone plays when women and girls are murdered. Whose jurisdiction is it? Whose responsibility is it to care? It's all of our responsibility to care. It doesn't matter that Lisbeth died in a town nearby. Her family lives here too. Her family has grieved her. Her family has been impacted by gender-based violence and has had to endure that process alone. This city has not supported Yane and her family as they've gone through this process. We've been there for her. And so this shows us that, like Yane, many women in your city are being failed. And we also know this from canvassing in your city and speaking to women directly and hearing how they themselves have not felt supported as women who've had to escape violence in your city. So, I think we need more action to be done. Again, it is not enough for you to just hear and to just be aware of Roya's story. It is not just enough for you to be aware of Lisbeth's story. Yane can be here with you, Lisbeth's family can be here with you today, but Roya's family cannot. In part because her only living relative was murdered this year. And in part because the rest of her family lives overseas. But it doesn't mean we don't owe them answers. And it doesn't mean we don't owe Roya justice. And it doesn't mean that what Roya went through wasn't real, and it is. And it's a reality for many women in your city. And until you start to take concrete actions, the reality is that it's going to happen again. There will be another Roya. And so for the 4 years that we've campaigned around the state to raise awareness about Lisbeth's murder as femicide, to raise awareness to everyone to understand what femicide is and how it shows up in our communities, the reality of it, the need for prosecution around it, the need for laws to actually recognize and codify femicide. And on a municipal level, the need for municipalities, the need for our council members, the need for our alders, the need for everyone to actually care, to see women. Do you actually see the women in your city? I don't know if you do. And your silence tells us you don't. Your lack of action tells us you don't. This is the reality that your constituents face. We're here with Yane today, but we will keep coming back with several of your constituents. If you need to see them, if you need them to come here and open their hearts and tell you their testimonies of violence and tell you why this matters to them, tell you why we are all Roya at the end of the day. That is why so many of us are called. And many of us don't live in West Haven. We live in nearby outside towns. Some of us live in Hartford, but we care deeply about Roya. And so I'm here to remind you all that we do have all eyes, not just on from West Haven, but all eyes around the state here. The same way we had to raise awareness and point all eyes into East Haven to ensure that they did not let Lisbeth down, that they did not let their family down. Roya deserves no less. It's been over 1 year, and this, what we have, is not enough. You shouldn't need to wait for us to file an official complaint for you to take action. We've come here week by week to raise our concerns. You know why we're here. But if you need us to follow the process, if you need us to get the evidence, Dorinda, I will gladly compile all of that evidence and bring it here and bring it to the police council meetings and bring it anywhere I need to bring it to show how this police department has failed Roya, how this city is choosing to fail Roya. Every single day, every single week, because we're reminding you of it every single week. And we're seeing very little to no change. Thank you, that is all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak before the city council? For the second time, would anyone like to speak before the city council? For the third and final time, would anyone like to speak before the city council? Public session is now closed. Time is 7:13. We will now convene the 4/22/24 regularly scheduled council meeting at 7:13. I'm looking for a motion to approve the journal of 4/4/24.
Motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. Motion carries. Also, we have the approval of the journal for 4/8/24. Do I have a second? I'll entertain a motion for that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Any
Point of order,
discuss-
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
There's a correction. Page 3, Finance Committee, Councilwoman Akbarelli was present, and she was chair of the Finance Committee, not myself.
Thank you. The clerk has noted that. All right, let me take it from the top. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
As amended.
Oh.
I was going to say, I'd like to amend my motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
And who was the second?
And the second.
Coletti, perfect. Any more discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay. Motion carries. All right, on the agenda this evening, we have an executive session to talk about public safety. At this time, I do need everybody to clear. We will be inviting in the police department, any agents, and the chief. That's you saying? You want to be? Public safety.
And we're going to enter into executive session at 7:15. Okay, we're out of executive session. The time is 8:22.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience, everyone who stayed. I'm sorry. At this point, we'll have the council clerk hand out the communications for this evening.
We have communication A from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for April 2024, which will be filed with tonight's minutes. Communication B from Joseph Perno, Chief of Police, regarding animal shelter donations being assigned to the Finance Committee. Chairwoman Tucker. Communication C from Mayor Dorinda Borer regarding the contract between PKF O'Connor Davies and the City of West Haven for the annual fiscal year 2024 audit being assigned to the Finance Committee. Chairwoman Tucker. And communication D from the Superintendent Neil Cavallaro regarding a bid waiver for replacement and repair of boilers at Carrigan School being assigned to council as a whole. Chairman Pascal. And that concludes our communications for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We will now recess into committee meetings at 8:24. First up, on the agenda, we have an ARPA update. Ken Carney is not here, so we're going to skip over that and do that next meeting. Communication D, if I could have Superintendent Cavallaro and Chris Everone come up to the podium, please. So communication D is regarding a bid waiver for the replacement and repair of the boilers at Carrigan School.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How we doing? It's a good thing I have. That's why I have Chris with me. He's good with this stuff. Listen, I think for those of you, council, especially the council members who've been around, this has been an ongoing problem at Carrigan. I recall, I think it was at our budget meeting a couple of years ago, where somebody asked me the status of Carrigan, and I happened to have pictures on my cell phone of the leaking pipes and the rust and things, and it's in really bad shape, and it's deteriorated since. The original intent was to go to a high-efficient steam boiler, or a high-efficient energy boiler. I think what we found with that was that the scope of the project was just too big. You know, once that project started, we really don't know what the cost would have been. What we are proposing tonight, what the city has proposed, is to replace the current boiler with a steam boiler. It is the cheapest, most efficient way to get us heat in that building by October 15th. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an HVAC person, I'm not a plumber. However, I can tell you that we've had many issues at Carrigan where it's too hot, it's too cold, the pipes are leaking, and we're in a situation now where, again, come October 15th, there's got to be heat in that building, and we run the risk of there being no heat. We can talk about other solutions, maybe down the road, but we're at a point now, and again, I hate to come here and, almost put a gun to I feel like I'm putting a gun to your head and saying, you got to do this. I mean, it's a choice you have to make, but I don't think there is much of a choice. We have to have heat in that building come October 15th. The other reality of it is that's the second largest building second largest populated school in West Haven. There are over 900 students there. There's over 100 faculty members there. If something were to happen, there'd be nowhere to move the kids. It's not like moving Washington over to Malloy with a few modular classrooms. Again, I think the situation is that dire. Again, I understand the purpose of the bid process. I understand getting market value. However, for those of you that reviewed the packet that we sent up to you, we did put it out to bid. I think there was a reluctance because of the type of project or the original scope of the project. We talked about repiping the building, and I think, frankly, contractors got afraid of what they might find there. So as I said to you when I started out, this is the simplest, quickest, least expensive and most efficient way to get us heat in that building come October 15th. And it is that situation. I have a very good friend of mine who taught for me when I was principal at Thompson many years ago, Elisa Rice, who was out of her classroom for over a month because the pipes burst. I mean, and those are the kinds of things that have been happening there. This will alleviate that because, again, I'm not an engineer, or the pressure and the way the new boiler will work will make do. And again, I don't like, we rarely come to waiver of bid. So I think when we come, I think we deserve that, take it seriously. I mean, this is it's an emergency situation.
Now, I know the council has many questions on this. I just want to get that started. You're prepared for questions, correct, Neil?
Yeah,
Okay.
Chris, we can talk about what we're doing. I
Yes.
think a little bit of the history of it. We don't have all of the history from the original scope, but we'll do the best we can.
Okay, I appreciate that. Councilman Locke.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. So, just to be candid, this is a loaded gun to our head. That's how I look at it. Can you tell me, from the time you get a PO, what is the lead time start to finish?
I can answer that. So speaking to our vendor, if we get a PO by May, he could get the boiler by August, late August, which won't impact school starting because it's in the boiler room. Yeah, the sooner we get a PO, we could get it ordered and get it by August. That's what he told me last weekend. So
Okay. Once you get the boiler, what's the lead time from getting that boiler delivered and the project completed?
So the project complete will, our target date is October 15th. We plan on middle of September, end of September latest. If everything goes well and we get the boiler in by end of August.
Yep. Okay. There's no lead time in the quote, start to finish. I'm just pointing that out to you. The other thing I want to point out to you too is that the quote is expired. We had 15 days from the 27th to kind of get this done. I kind of look at this and I say to myself, there's a tremendous amount of gaps. In terms of the Honeywell Jace 9000 controller, have you accommodated for, is there a licensing agreement? Have you accommodated the cost of that, as well as, firmware updates to that controller? Has that all been captured somewhere, those costs?
So we have all these controls throughout our district. So everything's included in that, the upgrade, the licensing, and the firmware updates as well. So it's all included in that quote.
Okay. So that Niagara platform that this runs on, is that in the new high school?
Everything, yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's all we have is Niagara.
Okay, great. How do you, in terms of validating the quality of the project, in terms of making payments to the supplier, what is your milestone plan? What is the thinking there? It says net 30 on here. It says, it's almost $900,000. What's your strategy to
It's your strategy because for those of you that aren't familiar, the contract is between the city of West Haven and the vendor, not the Board of Education.
Okay.
You are responsible for capital plans and upkeep. My job is to keep you informed of what our priorities are.
Okay.
So at some point, assuming you approve the waiver of bid, you're going to develop a contract between the city of West Haven and F&F. It's no different than Winkle Bus. People think the Board of Ed has a contract with Winkle Bus, for example. No, the city of West Haven has a contract with Winkle Bus. We go through your purchasing ordinance in order to secure vendors or contracts.
Thank you. That's it for now. Yeah, I'm sure I'll have more.
Councilwoman Heffernan, go ahead.
Thank you. So would you be starting before the boilers could come in August. You would get all the pipes done first.
No.
No. So you'd be doing pipes after the boilers.
The scope of the project has been dramatically reduced. I think what happened was when they did the original walkthrough, and Chris, I think you were at the walkthrough, there were only 3 vendors that showed up. I think there was a reluctance on vendors' part to take on a project like this because they didn't know what they would find once the walls started coming down and, you know, the age of the building and other things. So at the end of the day, F&F was the only bidder to bid when the RFP originally went out from the city.
But they're not. Why is that not able to be done? I don't Is it a dumb question? I mean, why?
No.
I mean,
Yeah,
they figure if it's July and August and the school's empty and they can't get the boiler till August, they can't do the other work beforehand.
There's not a lot of other work that's going on. I mean,
hundreds of
we're
feet of pipe,
bypassing
right?
a lot of the piping work.
But there's hundreds of feet of pipe in this.
The replacing of the piping will happen as soon as, you know, we have a signed contract with
Yeah.
them. Boiler demo, removal of the old boiler. We have 2 boilers currently there.
Yeah, I know,
One
I know.
hasn't worked all year, so we're going to remove that one and anticipate the new boilers coming and start doing some of the repairs of the pipes that need to be
But
done.
it won't be the entire building.
Right? Yeah. it won't be
I
yeah.
understand that. I was just looking at even the scope of the hundreds of feet that they're saying they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's still, I would think that they could be prepped for their installation, and then it wouldn't be the middle of September, the end of September, when, you know, it'd be up and running. If they could do it previously, they could just go in there, put the boiler in August, and have it ready for school.
I think that's the goal is to get the boiler up and running
Right.
as quickly as possible.
Listen, I've substituted in that school. I know what I actually know what it's like. I have sweltered and frozen, depending on what room you're in. So, and I know it must be uncomfortable for everyone, teachers and students. But, you know, do we really have to do this tonight? I mean, can we?
Well, I'm gonna say this: the longer we
Right.
take, the longer
It gets
the lead time is,
right.
and gets pushed back further, and then we're at, you know.
But I mean, these are questions that I know you guys know all about it. You've been talking about this for 10 years.
It's been a long time, and I think that's why we're in the emergency situation we are. But I completely understand that, you know, anytime something like this gets thrown on your desk, most people aren't aware of the history, and you were on the board. There's a few council members that have been around for a while, but it's a new thing. But I can tell you that this has been the board's #1 priority to do those boilers as part of our capital plan for the last several years.
I know this is a completely different project than the one you proposed previously.
It's a reduced scope.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilman Bargo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heine, how are you? The my understanding is that the scope of work before it was reduced to what it is, so the original replacement plan was for a different type of boiler, more boilers, an additional boiler room to better service the building. It's a large building.
Right. There were going to be 2, one for the pool area.
Yeah, so there was going to be 2, the main boiler room, and then they were going to add a new boiler room up the other side by the pool, kind of cut the building in half. And the point of that was the pipe runs. You know, we have a lot of tunnels, and it was, you know, and redundancy. At least we have some heat in the building if something goes down too. So that was the point of the original scope.
So, and that's to an address and a problem that you're having now of where the boilers are now compared to the other side of the building. It's taken a long time for the water to get to the other end, and therefore it's not as hot. You're having efficiency problems. I have the same problem with the church across the street.
Yeah. So right now we have steam in there.
Yep.
We're running on one boiler, about 4 pounds of pressure. Usually those boilers run a little higher, like 6 to 7. So it takes more to get further away from the boiler plant to heat the building. Luckily we had a mild winter, so we were able to accomplish what we needed to accomplish. But so that was the reason to put 2 boiler rooms in. Kind of reduce the pipe runs too.
Right. So my concern is that now we're going back to basically just we're replacing the pipe. I get that. We're replacing the boilers. They're probably more efficient, and I understand that. Is everybody on board, all the stakeholders, comfortable with keeping the layout and the design the way it is now, but just having the 2 new boilers? Is that going to be sufficient to solve that problem, or are we going to hear in a couple of years that the building is still freezing or still too hot?
I think putting everything back to where it is, it still will be efficient as long as we have 2 boilers working to build that redundancy for steam.
At what point will there be no heat in that building? At what point of the project will there be just no heat in the building?
The summer.
Okay.
That's our goal. The summer and start of school, which we don't ever need heat.
And 10/15 is my understanding is a statutorily
correct
imposed deadline.
Correct.
And what happens if you don't meet that?
That's a good question. Really, I don't know the answer.
I mean,
to that.
listen, there's some years we don't turn it on until end of October. It's the weather.
Right.
The weather dictates everything. So, I mean, obviously, and sometimes we turn on before the October 15th, depending on the weather. It dictates,
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Locks was next up.
Can you tell me at what point in time the scope changed?
I think the cost dictated it, really. I mean, I think what happened was in talking to some of the vendors, or to talking especially with F&F, who works on our schools.
Yep.
The prices would be too exorbitant to do the original scope of work.
Yeah.
And I also think the time frame wasn't doable. And every contract said this is impossible to do between your time frame.
Yeah. Let me ask the question a different way. When did the scope change?
I don't know.
Okay.
The honest answer is I don't know.
Okay. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, the scope changed, and because at a point in time the scope changed, and now you can't go out and multi-bid this. So I guess at the end of the day, if you can't go out and multi-bid this, and you're asking us to approve this right now, I would think at a minimum you would obtain a quote that actually makes sense so that we could make an educated decision today. But for me, there's so many things missing. Like I look at phase 1, preparation and demolition. Phase 2, boiler and piping installation. Phase 3, condensate system and controls. Phase 4, startup and commissioning. What are those lead times? The only thing you can tell me is that, hey, we might be getting a boiler delivery in August. I mean, you're asking a lot of us. And that's kind of the fundamental issue that I have.
We're not, again, we want the heat.
Yep.
The contract and the timing and everything is done through the city, through the capital projects.
Yep.
And also at the end of the day, once this bid is waived, the city is going to negotiate a contract with F&F where you can fill in the blanks and either say yes or no. I mean, we're pretty confident, given F&F's track record and their history with working with us, that they're going to live up to what we said. And we have I think the city does as well with their buildings. We have a pretty good relationship with them.
Yeah.
And, Frank Finelli, who's been a long time West Havener, and his son works there, and they've got a good history, and they know our buildings very well.
Right.
I don't believe he would say things or put things down that he couldn't live up to. I think he would do his best to live up to them.
Sure.
But again, I don't disagree with your questioning and your good questions, but I think that's all part of a negotiation that's going to come should you choose to waive the bid.
Yeah. So because now you have to, these issues are being brought up, and now you got to go negotiate. This really could drag on for an extended period of time, correct? Because the city's going to now take it and negotiate. Is that how it works?
Well, you're going to get the best deal you can get. Again, I'm here telling you, I've had an issue probably for the last 5 years, and I'm sure that I've been here, and again, those of you that have been here have heard me talk about the need to upgrade the boilers at Carrigan.
Yep.
how it's done and the scope in which it's done, again, it's the city's responsibility to upkeep the buildings.
Understood. Yeah, I kind of get that.
You know,
But as somebody, as somebody who's supposed to look out for taxpayers' dollars, I kind of look at this and say, it's not passing muster. And I personally, just to be candid, would never sign off on it. It's not best practice, and it's dangerous.
To be candid with you, I don't know where the $4 million came from.
Yep.
I always questioned the original scope of work.
Sure.
Here's what I know about piping. I know when I go into the basement of my house, I could see the pipe that runs from the water heater to my kitchen sink.
Yep.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to repipe a building the size of Carrigan.
Yep.
And I always questioned where those numbers came from and if they were going to be true. And again, for those of you that know anything about city buildings or older buildings, what happens every time you punch a hole in a wall?
Mm-hmm.
You're worried about asbestos and electrical and things like that. So I was always concerned about whether or not we were going to get everything that we said we were going to get. But at some point, I've got to trust the people to get the job done and to get me heat in the building.
Exactly. Listen, there's always risk with these projects. I've done enough of them. I know. I don't know if anybody else has any questions.
No, your questions are. You're looking at it from a different perspective. I understand that perspective.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to. The last thing I want to do is shortchange the students at the city of West Haven in terms of having an environment where they can learn and be educated. Last thing I want to do. On the flip side of that, I kind of look at this on the surface and say, not passing the sniff test. So that's why I'm asking the line of questions that I am.
Absolutely. That's what you're here for, and I respect that. Again, for those of you that don't know, I sat in that chair for 10 years and asked a lot of the same kinds of questions.
Hi, Neil. I just have a quick question. I read the new resolution that came through around 5 o'clock, and there was no mention of ARPA funds. So I'm curious, how are we paying for? Can you confirm that we're using ARPA funds?
My understanding is that you're not using ARPA funds, that the project was already bonded for. If you remember, Melly, the original, financing was $2 million ARPA funds, $2 million bonding. I believe the city has already bonded that money so that you're now going to take some of the money, I think it's less than the $2 million, to pay for this actual part of the project.
Okay.
The mayor can add to that if you.
Okay, I just was curious because do we have to take a vote to move it back to ARPA? I mean, because it was in. Yeah, please.
Sure. So. Why do I just keep hitting it? Okay. We already bonded $2 million because it was a $4 million project. $2 million bonding, $2 million in ARPA. We had bonded the $2 million. The 500 now 750,000. We can't use ARPA for now because that project originally that money was earmarked for is not going forward, so it has to be bonded. So we actually met on this again Friday to make sure the bonding is the right course because we already had the money in the bonding. That's the first question. What was the second question? No, you had another question. So are we all free?
You asked about the resolution.
Oh, the resolution.
I'm not sure that. Again, I don't know the particulars, but I don't know that you'd have to actually vote on a resolution tonight since you've bonded for the money.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, I had a moment there. Paul Dorsey's here, but I think I can answer for him because we consulted with the Corporation Council today that because this is about the bid waiver and it's not about how we're paying for it, we didn't need to put that in the resolution about funding for the ARPA. And because you're not taking money from ARPA, it doesn't need to be in the resolution. Eventually, you are putting the money back in ARPA because you're not using it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So Corporation Council had concluded you don't have to reference funding because it's about the bid waiver and not about ARPA because we're no longer using ARPA. helps.
That makes sense. I did not know that. So thank you for clarifying. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Donovan?
Thank you, Chairman. All right, so I just want to clarify. You guys can answer, and then I'll probably lean towards you with this one. So you're just requesting, you're just asking us for a bid waiver tonight. The contract and stuff, that comes later on, correct?
Correct.
I just want to make sure that that's clear. And the money that we allocated, I say we because I was on the last council, we allocated for, I think it was 2.1 million for the boilers at Carrigan. Now that we're not using that for that, does that come back into continue the whole amount? Or did we use some of that money? I know we probably used it for maybe engineering or something, but is there anything else? I don't think you guys can answer this. That's why I'm leaning this way, so I don't mean to ignore you.
So it was 500,000 approximately for the boilers, 250 I think for the engineering and the scope of the project. From what I understand, a little before my time, but so that is all going through the bonding, and then the new cost of the project will be going through the bonding, right? Which will be, remember, it was 2 million ARPA, 2 million bonding. Right. That'll take up the whole 2 million bonding, which alleviates a good portion of what was allocated through ARPA for the project. So we reached out to UHY and the attorneys to now see what can that now be repurposed for. Because does it go in the revenue loss category? What category can it go in? So hopefully we'll get those answers, and then you can help use that as a guide to help determine now what do we do with that funding.
Yeah, that was my main thing, because if we are going to get, and I'm going to lowball it, say $1 million back of that, which I think we'll get a little more, but so we get $1 million, we can allocate as a group here. We can say we want to put it towards that money towards the cameras, or put it towards whatever other project.
It sounds like, Gary, you'd have that. So, that's where you'd have to go through the resolution and use the ARPA funds. But again, I'm no expert, but it just makes sense
exactly
to me.
So I just wanted to clarify what you were asking us for tonight, and it's strictly just the bid waiver to get this thing started in motion, and then the contract and stuff will come to us through you, I'm assuming.
I assume it has to go to MARB too. Again, it's a contract over $50,000, so I would imagine it would have to.
Right. Well, like I said, myself, I'm all for the bid waiver for tonight. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councilwoman Coletti.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello. I think we're all on the same page. We're all reasonable. I think we all understand the need to have heat in the school for the kids in the wintertime. I think the challenge for us here tonight is you're requesting that we kind of set a precedent in terms of time is of the essence. So I think our questions are leaning more toward, is time really of the essence? And that's for us to answer some of these other questions that we may have regarding the project. You're saying if this were held tonight for 2 weeks, it would potentially break the timeline and break the deadline of the boilers being able to be installed.
I don't know that. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay, maybe Rick can speak to that then, or
I mean, I would think that would have to. You'd have to again deal directly with the vendor.
Right.
I want to clarify something. Sure. I'm not asking you to set a precedent.
Sure.
There's clear language in your purchasing ordinance that allows for bid waivers and even emergency purchases. So it's certainly something that has been done in the past. It can be done, and there's a process to do it. Sure. I understand it's always more prudent, if you can, to put it out to bid and get the best price. I'm not going to argue with you there. But again, I think there's some responsibility on everybody's part here. Former councils, Board of Ed, administrations in the past. Sure. This is not new, but we're now at a point where, unfortunately, we've had times where there's been no heat. It's cold in that building. It's hot in that building. Last year, remember the gym was 100 degrees one day. It's in pretty rough shape.
Oh yeah, and I I respect the council of the past, but I do think we have the right to have our own understanding of what it is that we're approving, and the timeline in which we're being asked to do so, especially when there are a few questions around it, like some of those that kind of came up tonight. So then I'll just kind of push forward with a few of those questions then. Was there a prior contract in place for the $4.2 million project?
There was no contract.
There was
in
no
place.
contract. And the process that we would be approving tonight would be the bid waiver, so that it didn't have to go out to market to a contractor that's essentially already been approved, was the only bidder for the project, was already approved by council, was already approved by MARB, only the scope is changing, being reduced from 4.2 million to approximately 800 to 900.
I don't believe the specific vendor was approved.
Okay.
When it originally went out to bid, I think towards the end of January, that's when F&F was the only contractor to actually put in a bid for it.
Got it. Okay. And I may have a couple more questions, but I'll reserve that.
It's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Vargo, then Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Donovan once again kind of stole my thunder, but just want to confirm this question might be more appropriate for Attorney Dorsey. We received a proposal from F&F, but we're being asked to just approve the bid waiver process, and we are not in any way signing off on contract terms tonight, correct? Okay, so Attorney Dorsey said it's correct, and so at some point your office is going to be negotiating a contract with F&F. It will then come before the council to review, or are we authorizing the mayor to sign that subject to MARB review?
The contract wouldn't come back before the city council.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, the terms would be negotiated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Callahan.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. So forgive me because I am new, and I know a lot of you have been around for a long time. But that being said, I am a huge fan of Carrigan because I am the 6th District. I've been a person who graduated from Carrigan with high honors, and I love that school dearly. So that being said, it is very true to my heart. I feel your pain. Probably was starting back when I was going to school there. But anyway, that being said, and forgive me if other people have asked these questions, but also being in business myself, everything always, as you had said, goes out to bid to 3, at least minimum 3 vendors. And you had said many times that just F&F was the only one that came back. Can you provide us with the other people that have stepped up to look and said no? Maybe not tonight, but down the road.
It may be in your packet.
Is it in the packet?
Purchasing probably has it.
I was just curious. Because all of us,
not in your
even
packet? Yeah.
still, that was one of the questions that was lingering for me. And I know that you have this all in your best interest. And if this particular company is the only one that's coming back to do the work, then obviously our hands are tied. And in a perfect world, we'd like to all see 3 bids. And I will look back, forgive me if I didn't see who the other 2 were that said they were not going to bid, but I was just curious about that myself. And the other thing is maybe not so much a question, but to follow up with Councilwoman Coletti, that we are tonight just voting on the waiver, but that being said, we will never see the contract, according to Attorney Dorsey. So,
Yeah, again,
so basically tonight is the vote.
Well,
Is that fair to say?
That's the legal.
The bid process, you don't see contracts for any of the public bid. This is only the only thing we're asking here is to waive the bidding process. That's it. I mean, if we do a public bid on something, we don't bring the contract to city council for your approval.
I understand that.
Yeah, so
but we don't have any other bids. That was my question. Like, basically my question, like I had stated, was we have no other bids. I heard that part. So the only bid we have is that. Obviously, we don't see, the whole contract. We're not professionals in that respect. It's just
Right.
that what I'm asking tonight is, because this is the only bid in place, this is what we're voting on. To just waive the, bidding on the waive.
You're voting to waive the bidding process and to allow us to negotiate with F&F Mechanical.
That's their proposal, and obviously,
Right.
the city's going to protect your interests when the contract is negotiated.
Okay, I'm just trying to, thank you again, like I'm new, and I'm just trying to understand what we are actually voting on tonight, so,
I've been doing it 16 years, and I still get confused.
okay, I rest, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Locks.
Thank you, Councilman Pascal. Can you just walk us through that RFP process, how you came up with this? Who were the players? Who met with the provider at the site? Who did that? Like who put something in writing, or who emailed, or who connected with F&F to get this executed?
So the Scott Kraniak from HF Lens Engineering wrote the scope for us.
Yep.
They were the company that won, obviously, the engineering contract for this.
Yep.
Went through the ARPA committee.
Yep.
It was put out to bid by Tammy O'Connell, who's our procurement specialist.
Right.
She and Ken Carney and Scott Kraniak from HF Lens attended the walkthrough at Kerrigan.
Yep.
And they accepted the bids, but that was the bid process.
Did procurement do the walkthrough with you?
Tammy O'Connell's procurement.
So the answer to the
yes.
question is yes.
Yes.
Okay. And this quote came back and was, in your eyes, acceptable? The quote came back and in your eyes acceptable?
So this is in a perfect world. Is this something that we received one bid?
Yep.
The scope changed quickly. FNF knows our controls. They know everything. They're in a perfect world. If this bid was was one of four, I'd probably look, give it a second look. But it's the only bid we received. We work with FNF. A good amount of business with FNF. They're a reputable company. Our engineer didn't have a problem with their scope.
Yep.
ARPA committee didn't have a problem with it. So I'm not an engineer. I don't know.
Yep.
I understand you're saying there's not a lot of KPIs in here and not a lot of timelines and metrics in there. I understand that.
Yeah, I would never expect a KPI, or I would never expect a metric, or that would not be appropriate for an RFP or an RFX. That's not a typical ask. I guess, again, it goes back to the rationale for why you're asking for a bid waiver that, in my eyes, is not passing muster.
Okay. And to all due respect, what would you suggest then?
Oh, I already did. Well, if you look at terms and conditions, they're not favorable to the city. If you look at the quote, it's expired. If you look at the dollar value and the payment terms, it says net 30. I mean, it's just, for me, it's not. It doesn't seem to be the correct process. It seems to me to not even be close to like best practice in terms of executing a project like this.
Okay.
Just my opinion.
Yep.
Key performance indicator.
All set for now?
Yeah, sure. But, honestly, I would like to make a motion that we caucus behind closed doors to, if that's appropriate. And
You don't need a motion.
Okay.
You need a motion to caucus, but you can caucus at any time.
Okay.
Once discussion's done, we can roll into caucus if that's
Yep.
the body. Yes, okay. You're all set for now, though?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Tucker.
Yes. Thank you. So the question I guess I have is about, you mentioned the prior councils not having dealt with the issue. And having served on a prior council, the one immediately before this council, I don't recall ever hearing this be an emergency situation like what you're saying it is today. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about what was requested with the prior councils and why this issue wasn't taken up?
That's an issue that the other council could answer, but I can tell you that when we brought forth our capital plan every year when we did our budget, it was the priority project to get this done. And, you know, and again, I recall handing my phone to, I think it was Robin Watt, who sat right there and passed it around and showed some of the damage that was being done as a result of the leaky pipes. So it's been the board's, my priority for at least the last 5 years that these projects had to be done.
But was it not taken up because there wasn't funding for it? Or, what was the issue?
I don't know. I don't fund the projects.
Okay. So, I mean, just because it sounds like, and the reason why you're getting the response, I think, is we're all feeling that emergency energy, that it's got to be solved today, right now, and if it's not, it's our fault.
I don't think I said that. I don't think you heard me say that.
Well, no, I didn't hear you say it, but I certainly feel that. I feel the pressure, right? I think that's what we're all feeling is the pressure. And nobody wants to see the kids freezing. Nobody wants to see them sweltering. We want to do the right thing,
Sure.
But we also want to be fiscally responsible, right? And so I'm just saying that, when you invoke prior councils, as though this might be the fault of other prior councils and why we haven't gotten this solved before today, especially having been one of the people that served on it, I have to ask the question to get clarity on what. I don't recall that being our position to
Maybe it was funding. In other words, you approve the funding, you don't put the funding in place. I don't know the reason why it wasn't funded, but I can tell you that it's been in our capital plan and it's been our highest request for the last several years.
Okay. So then the other question I have is, I understand that there were boilers that were purchased already as part of this work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that and where they are?
Again, the city purchased them. We didn't. That came up at a board meeting.
Okay, well, who can talk about that then?
Whoever
I don't. Well, you're here as a representative of the work, so I'm asking. I don't know.
No, that's a good question. I really don't know the answer to that because I think there was a scope of work that was approved by. I don't know if the council approved it. I don't know. I know the MARB approved it, and again, the scope changed. My belief is it changed because the price was just ridiculously high. There was no way that it was going to fit into that $4 million budget. Okay. But, as far as purchasing the boilers, I didn't authorize the purchase. The board had nothing to do with the purchase.
Okay, well, can we talk about that?
You sure can.
Yeah, so boilers were purchased from Wind Supply of Shelton, was the boiler company we bought them for. They are in the city's possession and will be used for upcoming boiler replacement projects at other schools, but not for this project.
So there was an authorization to purchase those?
From the council and from the council appropriated through ARPA and from MARB as well. It was brought to MARB.
As a part of the scope of this work for Carrigan?
No, as a part of the original scope of work, yes.
The original $4 million number.
The boilers for this project right here are part of this whole project. There's been no purchase of boilers for this project yet.
Thank you.
Welcome. Let me go on to Councilman John Stone and then.
Thank you, Chairman. Give me a second here because there's a lot of stuff flying around this room. So the only thing I can think to start with is I'm having flashbacks of when we were meeting about the trash program in Harriet North. Gun to the head scenario. I asked the people from Deep, what happens if we don't make a decision on this? The two individuals look at me and they go, well, we're moving on to somebody else. And I go, well, if there's just more questions than answers, then I have to be a no. I hope it works out, but I have to be a no. I'm not telling you guys I'm a no, but I am saying, sitting here, I always have a couple thoughts during a council meeting. What is MARB thinking? What would they say if one of them were in the room?
And then I'm hearing Councilman Vargo and Councilwoman Coletti. They're hinting at I'll just address the elephant in the room, that old culture in West Haven. So now I think of the residents in the room, the residents sitting at home, thinking to themselves, here we go again. We're at the midnight, right before the stroke of midnight. We have to make a decision, and it is what it is. I'm not accusing you guys of doing any wrong. I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong. But I also sit here, and we clearly still have communication problems in this city. And I know the new administration is working around the clock to fix it. But at the same token, I really don't think, looking at just shy of a $900,000 bid and all the contractors I've met in my lifetime, I just can't fathom that there's only one person willing to bid it. And two, I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I just don't think, even if it's the one company bidding, that they would let a 2-week window, so we as a collective group make sure everything's done right, we do what's right by the constituents and everybody involved, we make Marb happy, we're respectful to each other, everyone's communicated. To Councilman Vargo's point earlier, which seemed like forever ago, was, all parties involved, everyone has signed off on it. I just feel like as this conversation goes on, there's just too many questions, and I don't feel a contractor would let a 2-week window and an $850,000 job go out the door. I feel like they would find a way to make it happen. I'm not, like I said, I'm not accusing you guys. I'm just saying this is what I'm gathering as I'm sitting here.
Look, if I were, I'll answer as honestly as I can. If I were in your position and I had the same doubts, I would do the same thing. I'm not telling you here, I don't think I said tonight, if you don't vote on it tonight, we're not going to have heat October 15th. I think there is some sense of urgency, but is tonight an absolute deadline? I don't believe so. Okay. And remember, this started, I want to say, definitely the prior administration, when the engineer went out, they looked at a scope of work, they determined this is what the RFP is going to be. I mean, again, typically we don't get involved in that. When the city is going to fund a project, we follow the city's bidding process. We follow their purchasing ordinance. We do the best we can to try to come up with, we use experts to come up with numbers, whether it's to secure an architect for a project or whatever the case may be. I'm here tonight. I'm the superintendent of schools. I was asked to come here tonight. I'm telling you, I got to have heat in that building by October 15th. How we go about getting it, again, that's a decision you guys have to make. I respect, again, I sat here for 10 years. I respect your decisions that you have to make. Many times I voted against the majority when I was here. I would never tell you, vote for this or else. Frankly, I was always concerned. I mentioned it earlier. I was always concerned about that number because I always had doubts about the overall condition of Carrigan anyway. And once you started doing work in that building, what it would lead to. That was always a concern of mine, yet I had to rely on engineers, architects, and everybody else who went through that building. I believe Gilbane was part of one of the walkthroughs who did our high school. They did it as a courtesy. I think we had architects involved. Rick mentioned which is Scott Kraniak, the engineer. I mean, I didn't pull the numbers, out of the sky, but I was always, and again, I'm a lay person, but I know Carrigan pretty well, and I know that, I think the reluctance from bidders or contractors to put a bid in on this was, can I make this happen for whatever number that I submit as my final request? That's where I am with this. I'm not, again, please don't, that's not my style to say do it or else. It never has been. I wouldn't have lasted 16 years in this job if I did.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm just still, like I said, I'm still processing and gathering thoughts. But thank you. You answered my question. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm just reading the room here, and it seems like we have a lot of questions. I'm leaning on the fact that we should probably hold this for this evening. I don't think a caucus is necessary. I've read the room and the questions you have. Unfortunately, we will have to wait 3 weeks for this to bring it up, but I'm under the best assumptions that that's probably what's best for us at this point. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Rick Spryer, how long does it take to rebid this?
Our minimum guidelines are 10 days from publish of a legal notice to opening of a bid. Our bare minimum is 10 days.
And how long does it take to prepare the bid?
I mean, the bid's already prepared. We're just going to have to polish it a little bit. It looks like I haven't read the entire bid, but yeah, this is in time for the next council meeting. I can have it rebid and.
Okay.
You know,
There's our answer.
Let's that is
rebid
an
it.
answer.
We were told.
Mm-hmm.
We were told by those in charge of the ARPA project originally that because of the timeline, right? It was an emergency. But given the 10-day time frame, I think that we go to bid, we see who bids it, and then you come back to council.
Listen, even if I have to call a special meeting just for this, I can
Okay.
do that. But I think the best thing for everybody in the room right now is that we hold this.
Sure.
We regroup, get some questions answered, and we call it a day. So I will be holding this for this evening,
Okay.
and I'm moving on.
Nick, if I could just say one thing. First of all, thank you, for even taking it up. And I just, I don't generally speak for the board, but I think the intent of the board was, how can we expedite it? Because they've heard the concern about the heat. It certainly wasn't, the history of this or the money of this or how the money or where the funds were appropriated, how it was bid. Again, they looked at it simply from we want to make sure there's heat come October 15th. And that's what I'm here to represent tonight. I certainly understand and respect, the questions that you raised. And there are others that can answer those questions much better than I can.
I don't think there's an individual in this room that would deny heat to children, but
No.
they definitely still have the
That's-
questions answered. And
I hope
that's
I
what
didn't
our
get-
job is.
I hope I
so.
didn't give that impression. I apologize.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for coming down. Sorry, I held it for this evening, so discussion would be closed on that due to our rules. Okay, move. All right, that concludes council as a whole at 9:15. We're going to move on to the Finance Committee, being chaired by Councilwoman Tucker this evening.
Oh, good evening. Let's see. Okay, so at 9:15, the Finance Committee is convening with, let's see, Councilwoman Aquarelli, who is not present, Councilman Vargo, Councilman Locks, Councilwoman Garthwaite, Councilwoman Johnstone, who's back today, and myself, Councilwoman Tucker, acting as chair. We have before us the matter from Joseph Perno, the Chief of Police, regarding the animal shelter donations. We're just going to add those into you're going to read those into the record. Okay, is there a motion to approve? Is there
Second.
Is there a discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion passes. We also have before us Communication C from Mayor Dorinda Boer regarding the contract between PFK O'Connor Davies and the City of West Haven for the annual fiscal year 2024 audit.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Is there a discussion?
Just make sure when you're voting to turn your microphone on, please. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Okay, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I would. Which goes along with the approval of PK to do the auditing that I was going to share under finances. But I have really, what I consider really great news. The draft audit for fiscal year 23 was completed at the end of last week. And that's really significant for us because that catches us up in our audits. And we committed to the MARB that that audit would be done by June 30th. So we're a month and a half ahead of schedule. And as you know, that is one of the criteria for our road to recovery and exiting MARB. So we worked really hard to make sure we addressed everything in that audit, and we got that news last week. So, and going back to PK, they worked really hard to get it done, and I think they've been excellent auditors. So I'm just advocating for them to continue through their contract.
Is there any further discussion? So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Unanimously. That concludes the business of the Finance Committee at 9:20.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now reconvene to the whole council at 9:20. Moving on to unfinished business, seeing as there is none. We will go on to committee reports. Will the clerk please read Communication A, overpayment refunds, into the record?
Communication A from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for April 2024, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you very much. On to in-committee reports. We held Communication D for this evening. And Councilwoman Tucker, would you please report out?
To the Honorable City Council of the City of West Haven, your Committee on Finance, to whom was referred the matter of the animal shelter donations, reports that the committee met on the 22nd day of April 2024 to consider said matter. It was the unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved. The West Haven Police Department has received the following donations totaling $350 to the animal shelter. For Connecticut Statutes 7-148C, 3, A and B, and General Order 98-04, we are forwarding these donations for approval. The City Council of the City of West Haven hereby approves the animal shelter donations to be deposited into the animal shelter donations account number 1010000-28285. Do I have to read the names? Catherine Giuliano for $25, Diane Kuczynski for $50, Angela Russo for $100, Donna L. Grimolini for $50, Linda M. Bennis for $75, and Mark Mudgett for $50 for a total of $350.
You so move?
And I so move.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve a matter regarding animal shelter donations.
Second.
I have a second. Arthwaite. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
All right. To the Honorable City Council of the City of West Haven, your Committee on Finance, to whom was referred the matter of the contract between PKF O'Connor Davies and the City of West Haven for the annual FY 2024 audit, reports that the committee met on the 22nd day of April 2024 to consider said matter. It was the unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved, that the contract between PKF O'Connor Davies and the City of West Haven for the FY 2024 annual audit is hereby approved, and I so move.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to approve a matter regarding the contract between PKF O'Connor Davies and the City of West Haven for the annual fiscal year 2024 audit. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
That concludes the business of the Finance Committee
Thank you very
at
much.
9:25.
We now move on to action on ordinances previously presented. There are none. Do we have any liaison reports for this evening? Okay, seeing none. Any new business? Councilwoman Callahan.
Thank you, Chairman. New business, I would like to say that we made a visit to the animal shelter, and thank you to Councilwoman Garthwaite for letting us know that on Saturdays they do the cans for the animal shelter. We went, brought cans, and I'll tell you, it's very successful. It's a great thing for the animal shelter, along with Mayor Bohr getting us and help with the grants for improvement. So we went in with my friend Councilwoman Katie, and we met a lot of the team there. We met a dog, and I just want everyone to always, as you so sweetly do, remind all our residents too that our shelter's pretty full. So go on their Facebook page and share with your friends, because they do post a lot on their Facebook page of the animals that are available, the dogs and cats. And I think that would help us to kind of help the shelter along with moving the animals into loving homes. And we also, another positive note that I think we could use is we also did a great visit to Wheat over the weekend, and that's another thing for all of the wonderful residents of West Haven. They're looking for volunteers, donations, drop-offs. If they're not open, they have a bin outside, and they just want everyone to know that they're open to all and no questions asked. And it's just a beautiful facility, what they've done with it. So do yourselves a favor, or share with your friends to pay a visit over there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Councilwoman Garthwaite.
I want to take a second to thank Nico Antonuzzi from Troop 899 for coming out with Troop 1633, Troop 1, and Troop 633 to rebuild the Sandy Point Overlook Park garden. They made it rise again, and it's gorgeous. And I can't wait for our neighbors, Dave and Bob, to, come out and fill the gardens with flowers. So just want to say publicly thank you, and thank you, Mayor, for coming out and supporting. So.
Thank you. Any other new business? Councilman Fargo.
I just want to take a quick opportunity to thank Chief Perno, men and women of the West Haven Police Department, Mayor Bohr and her staff for the tremendous response of last week's unfortunate incident that happened here, and how quickly everyone went to action, the steps that you've taken, and taking this seriously. I just want to applaud everybody's response and how it was handled. It was very, very well done, very professional, and just a huge thank you to our men and women in uniform for taking care of us.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
So there we go. Thank you, Chairman. Oh boy. Excuse me if I get emotional. A big thank you to every individual that is sitting up here with me. I don't know if my wife is still watching, but what went down almost 2 months ago was, I heard it kind of shocked the city. I know Chairman Pascal mentioned briefly, but for those who missed it, yes, I'm 37 years old. I did have a heart attack. And genetics are a heck of a thing. You'd never guess it looking at me, but it is what it is, and by the grace of God, I'm still sitting here with you. So I want to say thank you to all of you sitting up here. That was, I've been humbled many times before in my life, and that's just how God works, but what you guys did for me and my family, I can never repay you. And especially a big shout out to Chief Scaffarello and his crew at West Shore Fire to kind of give everyone a breakdown of exactly how it happened. Within 15 minutes of the phone call to 911, Chief Scaff and his crew, they arrived at my house. They had me IV'd. They had me nitroed. They had me on the gurney, and they had me on my way breaking every speed limit to Bridgeport Hospital. That is a true testament to what our guys in our emergency services can do. And to every individual, there's not enough thank you cards. I think Dollar Tree is either sick of my wife or sick of me buying them out, but there was probably 100 individuals or more I ran out of room to hang the get well cards, the miss you cards, and everything in between. I think Uber Eats and DoorDash was kind of sick to come into our house for a brief while. And then 2 weeks later, being able to be there for my daughter being born, that was big. Gosh, I hate getting emotional. I'm supposed to be the sports guy up here, and I hate doing this, but thank you, everybody. I am truly blessed, and thank you. That's all, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, any other new business after that? I'll end off with the mayor.
Oh, sure. Okay, yes, that is. First of all, we're really happy to have you back, and you know how much we care about you. So my, subject is a little, well, I hate to be the wet blanket, but tomorrow is MARB, and we will be at MARB pretty much most of the day tomorrow. First, I want to thank you for all the work you're doing on the budget. The MARB has the budget and are working on it on a parallel track. So we are taking input from you. We are taking input from them. They have already sent back a good number of questions on the budget. We sent follow-up documents today, quite a large package. So we'll be taking their feedback tomorrow and throughout the process. We're going to remind them about the timelines and how important it is. Your timeline is May 2nd. Theirs extends beyond May 2nd. And I'm trying to avoid what happened last year, where you ran right into the day of when the bills have to go out. So we'll see what happens. They're here for a reason, and their input is valuable, and it's diverse. They have a lot of opinions, and we'll take into consideration. They have, well, I'll share with you after the meeting some of their input so that you have it while you're working on the budget.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Go right ahead.
Do back at work. I don't know. I'm working till 2 a.m. That's why this was fun.
This was